All right. Interesting emergent gameplay, or how a small player group broke a major game unexpectedly. All right. Has anybody here heard of the game Elite Dangerous? Most likely not.
Yeah. Fun game.
Have you?
Yeah.
Really?
I played that, yeah.
Well, that's what this game is about.
Drive a spaceship? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. That's what this is about. What is this game? What this game is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. It is set in a scientifically accurate Milky Way galaxy, and they do poll NASA for this data in order to get astrological information. As a matter of fact, they recently added a planet into the system that NASA discovered that could have an Earth-like world in it that is only 4 light years away from Earth. It's a realistic physics engine for flying around in your ships, and it is based on a popular game back in 1984 created by David Braben and Ian Bell. The original game's name was obviously Elite. This is just a continuation upon that lore.
Card game, right?
No, it was a PC game on like Amstrad.
It was an arcade game. Even I knew that.
Anyway, how the game works. This is the Cliff's Notes on how the game works. You have your major factions, which is power play. You have Federal Alliance, which is in the middle between Federal and Imperial, and then you have the Imperial. These are all major players. There's 9 in total. You have non-player factions within these major factions, which are smaller, and they all align in certain ways with these major factions. Players can choose to pledge between these factions, which is called power play, obviously. You go around, you fly around, you earn merits to either bolster one group or weaken another group. The background simulation for both the major and minor factions are independent from one another, which means you can fly around and work for the minor factions, and it won't affect any of the major power play factions at all, and vice versa. You can take over whole systems and everything in power play, and it's completely independent. Doesn't really matter at all. What our fleet focused on in this, in what we did, is we did not focus on power play at all. We focused on all the small NPC factions. I'll explain later what's going on with that. We employed a scorched earth policy, which means if we found a vector of attack, we continued on that vector of attack until our goal was accomplished, and then we moved on to the next achievement.
That is not what a scorched earth policy is.
Really, son? I'm being recorded here.
That is not what a scorched earth policy is. It is to destroy everything.
You got you there, though.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, basically, we just wiped out the faction that we were working with, that we were fighting against. We wiped them out until they were completely annihilated from the system. We didn't worry about expanding our faction because once we announced what we were doing and it got out into the public, that growth came back tenfold. And the system we were focusing on was a system called Tiliala, which is a podunk system. There's nothing really there, but we wanted it for us, for our purposes. Background: 2 years ago, we contacted, when the background simulation was added into the game, finally, which was 2.2, which was the version that they added it in. The Black Fleet, TBF, wanted our home system to be in Tiliala because we chose that system even before this. So we went to Fdev and asked them, we want our home system to be Tiliala. They were like, no, Tiliala is a permitted system. You can't have it. So they inserted our headquarters, our home system, into the system next door, Varpet. We hemmed and hawed around for a little while, and then 18 months ago, we decided to put our plan into place. What what we started to do is we mapped out where our opponent was, which is the conservatives of Tiliala. We mapped out where they were at, and we started from the outer fringes and worked our way in to them. They were the permit givers for Tiliala. After we did that, our goals became clear. It was going to be a hostile takeover of Tiliala. We were going to blockade the system. And then we were going to make sure that no players at all could acquire the system permit for the system of Tiliala. After we did accomplish these goals, we were going to force Fdev to acknowledge what we did and basically bend to our demands. We wanted our home system to be Tiliala, and later on, about 3 or 4 months ago, we decided we also wanted to be permit givers. Our player faction wanted to be the permit givers for the system. We adapted the motto, along with the somewhat watered-down version of Scorched Earth. We adopted the motto, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We triggered wars in the systems that the conservatives of Tiliala was in, and whenever a non-player faction would go into war with the conservatives of Tiliala, we would fight for the opposing group until we finally won the war, which, using our methods, was extremely easy. We would go in and we would basically kill everything. A war, it lasts 3 days. Once a war starts, and from start to end, it's 3 days, according to the rules of the game. After the war, we continued to battle our way around, destroying non-player ships and such, until they finally went into retreat. And then retreat lasted for another 3 days. And at the end, after that was done, they would go into retreat, leave the system, and then we would move on to the next system that they were at. What this did, though, was an unintended consequence of the rules that Frontier Developments had programmed into their background simulation. The problems of this is like it says in the third bullet point, is Sol, which is our solar system, is an important site for the game. People like to visit Sol. Everybody is all the newbies, once they can get out of the original starting systems, they want to go visit Sol. And once they get to do that, they have to earn a permit in order to get into Sol. Well, if we decided, since we had the Sol permit, if we decided to take out the group that controls that permit, we could lock Sol out from the entire system, unless other people already had the permit already. Sirius is another very important important system for the game, because there's an engineer in there that you can use to modify your ship to go faster, and I can't remember what else he does right off the top of my head, but everybody uses him to make their ship go faster. And there's also other important sites for the game lore that are also permit locked that we could have went in and did this. So if they couldn't access the systems, it would flood the support system with tickets. Why can't I access the system? Where's the mission? Where's the permit givers? Blah, 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 blah. And then they'd be scratching their heads, wondering what's going on, and they would have to comb through gigabytes of logs to find out what's going on. And then once they figured out what was going on, if we didn't tell them, which we did eventually, they couldn't fix that unless they broke the rules of the game themselves. So we presented this in a way that would make them more acceptable to it. We created lore around the whole battle, and they have their face for the conservatives of Tiliala was a gentleman by the name of General Ben Douglas. Well, in the lore that we created, we captured General Ben Douglas, and we exiled him on a planet within the Tiliala system named Valhalla. We planned out and recorded, voice acted, some audio messages that us, the Black Fleet, we intercepted them and we distributed them to Fdev, which is Commander Zach, which is a real person. His name is Zach Atinachi. He works for Fdev. He's the community manager. We gave them to him for the devs to work on. Things that we did is we embedded messages within messages, and we stuffed pictures into audio files, and we stuffed letters into the pictures. We did all kinds of steganography stuff, all open source information that you can find on the internet to be able to do this, and we hid clues throughout these audio files and picture files in order to find them. We also planned our end game for the scenario. The end game being either success, they capitulated to our demands, and they successfully rescued General Ben Douglas, or failure, where they didn't capitulate to our plans, and General Ben Douglas got executed. Thank you for the wrench. We weaved these out, and we presented them to Fdev, and all the messages are online. They can be seen at that web address, www.blackfleet.xyz. There's 4 of them. We did it all ourselves. They loved it, and this is their response. Commander Dav, which is the lead developer of the background simulator, he realized the rules were lacking, basically, that they were just not enough in there to be able to prevent such a thing. And this is actually kind of game breaking in a way, in many ways. The first real public mention of what was going on was about 2 weeks before we finally allowed them, because we gave them all this information 3 weeks prior to our mission ending. And about a week before they finally announced it, Commander Dav and another gentleman who do, they switch it out. They do live streams on YouTube. And Commander Dav, his quote was, "There's some interesting emergent gameplay that's been going on recently." When Commander Malik, who is the leader of the sovereignty, asked in the live stream about the background simulation if there's anything going on crazy about it. And he mentioned that. They giggled. They batted around the bush for about 2 minutes. And then he said that there's interesting emergent gameplay, and then just completely went off the subject. The next week was the planning phase of what they were going to let us have. We demanded 4 things. We wanted to be, our home system to be Tiliala. We wanted to be sole permit givers, which we did not get. And just as a joke, we threw in there, we wanted a mega ship. And we wanted to be independent. 3 of those things we got, 1 partially. There is supposed to be a planned PC gamer mentioning of what we did. We've been mentioned in Galnet, which is the internal news system of the game. We've been attacked on Reddit, which is great, which is exactly something we wanted to happen. Yeah, it was great. It really was. And because of their rules and the way they had to do it, they had to reprogram a lot of the background simulation and create a new status called Exile to prevent what we did from happening again. And how that works is, that's the end of it, unfortunately. How it works is, if something like that happens again, to where a player group would blockade a non-player faction inside a permitted system, they will go into what is called exile. And what that means is they had to create a ship for this whole thing. They had to create a ship for this whole thing to, it was called a Wells-class cruiser. And it is owned by the non-player faction that got exiled. People can land at it and run missions. And past that, I don't know of anything that's happened. Some things were supposed to happen this week, but I never really got to keep up with anything or anything about it. And next month may be the PC Gamer announcement. Any questions?
So was this something, sorry I missed the beginning of it. So was this something that the programmers just didn't see the scenario happening, or is this actual like error code that they actually just was lazy and left it alone?
A little bit of both, really. A little bit of both. With Elite Dangerous, they've got themselves spread so thin that they only have a couple people working on one thing, a couple people working on another thing. Graphically, the game is gorgeous. They really don't need to touch anything graphically, but they continue to tweak it. So they left the background simulation on the back burner, so to speak, and they didn't touch it from the time that they implemented it until we did what we did. So it basically stayed the same, other than bug edits. When they noticed what we were doing, they were like in old crap mode, basically, and that's why they created the new exile status and created the Wells class capital cruiser. That way, people can go and run missions for the permit holder. Any other questions?
You're a nerd.
Thank you.
I've actually seen YouTube channels where people break out of maps. So they could actually break out of the framework of the map and go to different locations that are still coded. You're still running around, but you're not in the field of gameplay, like first-person shooters and stuff like that.
Right.
You actually jump over the barriers because of the graphics.
Well, there's not really any barriers at all in Elite. It's an open sandbox game. There's 400 billion systems, and you can travel to every single star. Currently, as far as has been logged, 0.0004% of the galaxy has been explored so far. They're estimating that it would take somewhere along the lines of 15,000 years for everybody that's currently playing to explore the galaxy.
Like these giant games like this, which is great. But do you find that because they put so many games out and they're so advanced and there's so many people vying for time to eventually these games that are so immersive and so advanced, people get bored of it, they start dropping off the servers, and then you find that other people are not really playing them, and then they just kind of, servers drop off.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, finish.
Take No Man's Sky, for example. That game has 18 quintillion systems. Why? 18 quintillion systems, and they're all procedurally generated. Elite Dangerous does procedural generation as well, but it's only 400 billion systems, and it's scientifically accurate. Then you have, like I just said, No Man's Sky. You go any direction you want. Most likely, 99% of the time, you're going to get a different system. And the whole point behind No Man's Sky is you get randomly dumped in a system, and then the point is to get to the center of the galaxy. Okay, yay. Go ahead.
How many people play Elite Dangerous?
I don't know how many people actually play, but the servers have peaked at 18,000 continuous players at one point, and they hover around 6,500 to 8,000 players on a daily basis. It's not EVE Online. It's not EVE Online, which can hold 40 to 80,000 players, but they got a big server farm, and that's all they concentrate on. Frontier Developments, they've got Elite Dangerous, Roller Coaster Tycoon. They've announced a game that's based on Jurassic Park. That is an open sandbox game, but it's based on Jurassic Park. It's in the MMORPG.
Another thing with the gaming world, you see these games, people don't realize that this could be an attack vector, a very easy attack vector, because people are putting money into these games. If people want a different colored weapon or they want a different color,
yeah, you can do that.
Real cash on in-game items.
Yeah, there's microtransactions for Elite Dangerous. You can buy paint jobs. You can buy different colored lasers. You can buy body kits now.
That is monetary attack vector in a game that people in the normal world would have no clue about.
Right. Go ahead.
This is just to continue on to his question, you also have to keep in mind of NPC interactions as
Well, I
well,
was just talking
as
about-
enemy ships and all that.
I was just talking about get an idea about how many players there actually are playing.
Oh, well, I mean,
Probably 20, maybe
They're-
2,000.
their instancing system, they've been working on that. At most, because the sheer amount of data that it transmits, at most you'll probably meet up in like the noob systems 30 people. That's I think that's a cap with them. That's a I don't know if it's a physical limitation with their servers or if that's just a software limitation that they programmed in purposely. But when you hit one of those systems, you can have a system like what I do, an i7 with a 1070 GTX. And when you hit one of those systems, it'll go from 120 frames down to 15, like right then. And
Wow.
yeah, it kills the frame rate bad. And I mean, I can go 200 frames a second if my monitor would handle it normally.
Right.
But like I said, once you hit Eravate, which is the noob system, LHS 4442 or something like that is also the noob systems. You hit one of those two systems and you're in open, because there's 3 modes of play. There's open play, private groups, and then no, well, that's completely different. Solo. So you can play either by yourself in the galaxy, where all your actions stay at work against the background simulation. You work in private groups with people, and you can wing up 4 at a time and still do. I mean, it's all the same galaxy, and it works on the PS4 and Xbox versions as well. It's all the same galaxy. It's just they're all segmented off from each other.
Cool. I wish Morgan was here. He loves Elite Dangerous. And
Oh, it's a great game. I love it, and like I said, I'd have been better off practicing CTF instead of doing this. And I'm representing my group. It's XYZ Gaming Community. Represent. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, Dean will be happy. But that's all I got, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I wish more people could have been in here to ask questions.